Good afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome back to the Citizens Chat Show. My name is Masesa Demiano, your show host. Thank you for always being our ardent followers for these conversations that bring you civil and political engagements in Uganda and across the region. We've been having sleepless nights, tensions in the region coming from the elections in Kenya. And until they were concluded on Monday, and we're here to discuss the lessons Uganda can pick from the transition in Kenya, but also importantly the legacy of Kenyatta, the president who is on, but we hope that he will be handing over soon. And join on the panel to discuss this and much more, I have our regular panelists, and here we call him the government, retired Major Awich Pollar. Ndugu, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Which is the Director External Services with the National Resistance Movement, NRM. And followed is the East African himself, Professor Ndebesa, Mwambustya. He's always actually almost also a regular with us here, but he always comes in when we're discussing regional issues, and that's where he feels much more comfortable as the East African.
Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. And
thank you, fellow East Africans. Good evening, good morning.
Yeah, thank you. And followed is Dr. Sarah Bireete. She's the director with the Center for Constitutional Governance, and a regular panelist, but importantly is that she's the chair of the IHON, the Observer Mission in the Great Lakes region here, and she was an observer in Kenya. We want to pick her mind on what happened in Kenya, and we also welcome her back on the show. Sarah, you're welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Hope Kenya was great.
To a bigger extent, but
we'll get to
the climax was not great.
Lessons learned.
Lessons learned. And finally is our philosopher, Dr. Deus Kamunyu. Is a lecturer with Makerere University, but formerly the chairperson of Mwasa. Doctor, you're welcome.
Good afternoon, and we had anticipated that these the climaxing, the African ghosts keep, hovering. So we had thought that Kenya was going to go without any kind of skirmish, but the ghosts
are all over the place.
I'm happy to be here.
When we met to the head of African Union Observer Mission, His Excellency Koroma said, Kenya is Africa's shining star. And by then we are all celebrating.
So
I saw the professor of Nairobi University saying, I'm now recording the paper for remarking.
No, but importantly, into the conversation as is, I just want to, Sarah, just for you, just to tell us what was your general experience while in Kenya. What you pick from the elections in Kenya as an observer, and generally, how did you find the whole electoral process?
Yeah, maybe first I want to start with a little background of the Eastern Horn of Africa Observer Mission. Where I want to recruit the panelists today is it's an observer mission for Eastern Horn of Africa countries, including Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, the two Sudans, South Sudan and the Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Burundi. So we got missions, observer missions from Tanzania, South Sudan, Uganda, and Ethiopia for Kenya's election. And we are hosted by the Election Observer Network of Kenya, ELOG, which is a big institution bringing together all governance organizations, including religious groups. And it's a permanent election observer mission with proper structures and covering the whole country. So they were our hosts. But they also hosted the West African Election Observer Network as well as the South African Election Observer Network. So they hosted all civil society groups from Africa. So that's part of the mission that we worked together with as a collective. And we were about 8,000 observers.
Wow.
Yeah, but
number.
the Electoral Commission of Kenya, or the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission of Kenya, accredited 77 observer missions, including the EU missions, the UN missions, all over the globe, with a total of 18,000 observer missions. But only 16,500 observers appeared in Kenya. So you can imagine we're all over the place. But in addition to that, national institutions like the Office of IGG, the representative of Office of IGG, the Human Rights Commission, the Office of the DPP, were also observers in the field to make sure that nothing goes wrong this time. So we had that background of a credible process. The campaigns were largely free. I think there were only 3 places where supporters clashed. I had wanted to go for the final campaigns, but my hosts, because they were in Kasarani and all in Nairobi, the big rallies, but my hosts said, now we don't have police to protect you. What if something happens to you? Then they say the child of Ioni was beaten in Kasarani. So they stopped. I had really wanted, but they said on the final rallies, supporters of each camp organize chaos for the other. So it's like these traditional football matches where you say, we shall fight along the way. In Tare and Imbarai school used to do those things of fighting after football matches.
We stopped it.
But nothing happened. There was no violence. So we observed a peaceful election. We had exchange meetings with all other missions. Especially the African, personally I attended the exchange missions with the EU delegation that was observing elections, which had 108 observers from Europe, with a big secretariat, including data clerks, long-term observers, short-term observers, and the post-election mission. I also had an exchange meeting with the African Union, which had long-term observers, short-term delegation led by the former president of Sierra Leone, and then the diplomatic, they called it preventive diplomatic mission, led by the former president of Burundi. We had an exchange with the South African mission from the institute in South Africa that was led by the Ethiopian Prime Minister, former Ethiopian Prime Minister, where Bobi Wine and Besigye and others were observers in that mission based in South Africa. We had 3 concerns before the elections. One was the transmission of elections, the manner of transmission of elections. Our hosts, ELOG, had an exchange with the Electoral Commission on how transparent will the process of transferring elections be. And the Electoral Commission had promised the civil society groups that they will display on the screen an image transmitting elections, half the screen, and the other half will be the tabulation of elections. And they had said they will try to make sure that in 3 days, 2-3 days, they have the results to stop the anxiety, unnecessary anxiety of the supporters and then the electoral parties. That never happened. And when you see now the dissent of the commissioners talking about opaque process, we can't stop our minds from reflecting on that agreed methodology for transparent transmission of results. If you look at the tallies, the section 39 of the IEBC provides for provisional results, that the IEBC is supposed to provide provisional results as they verify and tabulate results to Kenyans. That also never happened. And the other issue that could be of concern is that up to today, nobody is sure about the number of Kenyans that turned up to vote, the total number of Kenyans that turned up to vote. The commission had the 22.1 registered voters. So the last statement from the commission, they say that 14 million voters turned up using the technology kits, and others voted using manual kits, and the number of those who voted using manual kits is not mentioned. Also, what is unknown today is the number of invalid votes. So nobody knows, whereas the tally takes the percentage of valid votes, but the total accountability of an election must have the number of citizens that stand up to vote, the number of valid votes, and the number of invalid votes. So that missing message
Meaning it can't be
creates doubt as to the, I'm sure the data exists, but it's not in public domain. I recently put an inquiry on the IEBC email inquiry sheet that's supposed to be rapid. So I posted and said, can I know the number of Kenyans that turned up to vote? And the message came, there was somebody replying because it's instant. Then later they said, give us your email. We send. I said, okay, also provide me with the number of total invalid votes. And I have not received a response. I wish to stop there, and I'm sure my colleagues were also following elections online.
Yeah, interesting, Sarah. And of course, for you are on the ground, and we wanted to have that real feel of how it was on the ground. But we've had this conversation almost, you are aware. So we had part of with the anxiety around. So we had part of the conversation last week, and this is more of an add-on, and see how we can figure out the issues on transition and, of course, the legacy of Uhuru. And I would want to bring in Professor. We see that while we're here in Uganda with anxiety, we were waiting for elections and we're all admiring how the whole process was. What, to this point, puts Kenya to a level where I say it's a better democracy than Uganda?
Thank you. As Sarah has pointed out, I think there might be flaws here and there in that election exercise, but I think they are way ahead of us. An election exercise or process is not just the balloting day and counting, the mathematics of it which we are not sure of. But at least from the time of, in election has got these election officials or stages, you have got the making of the law, the electoral law. I think in Kenya they made it in time. And then you have got appointment of the Electoral Commission, which should be transparent and maybe independent as it should be. I think somehow that one of Kenya, the process was, I think, fair. Then you have got the other stage is policing the electoral exercise.
Yes.
I didn't hear or see much or speaking out areas where the security forces were partisan. They could have been here and there, but by and large, they didn't demonstrate that one. Of course, we have got the voting and the tallying, which has got some of those flaws. And later on, of course, after the elections, we have got adjudication of the exercise, in case others are grieved. Kenya has already demonstrated, the judiciary has already demonstrated that it is somehow independent, and that gives hope to people. Possibly that reduces tension, where those who would want to be violent do not go that way because they have that hope. Because in the last elections, the judiciary nullified that exercise. But even along the way, there was this BBI proposal, which I think the judiciary also quashed, giving hope to those who are outside the government that something can be done without due interference by the executive. Now, the process, if you look at Uganda, for example, in the last, almost every presidential candidate, the one who somehow was perceived to be strong, has been arrested. Chiza Besigye, Amama Mbabazi, Kyagulanyi, Amuriat, I think even this Mao, nearly every president, Tumukunde.
Even Katumba Oye was arrested.
So, nearly every presidential candidate has been arrested.
Even 2016, Amama was taken.
I know, Amama Mbabazi I have mentioned. So, we have not had that
Preventive.
that preventive arrest in Kenya, which I think has continuously been reflected in Uganda. And even the violence that we have had in Kenya is perpetrated by supporters and candidates. But in Uganda, we have had people dying at the hands of the military or the security forces. And in the past, even those who died during such exercises, nothing has been done to investigate and look for solutions. You remember this driver of Kyagulanyi who was killed in Arua. I've never had any investigation going on. There was a time when somebody drove into a rally in Makerere and killed people. Nobody even followed up the pickup. I think in Rukunjiri we have had twice people dying at Besigye's rallies. Government didn't take up the matter. And there is, was it the 8th Parliament or 7th Parliament or 6th? I don't remember quite well. But there was a time when the parliamentary committee actually investigated violence, the cases of violence during elections, electoral violence. They wrote a report, presented it to Parliament, but it never was discussed in the plenary. It never, up to now. Whether it gathers dust or it was even burnt, nobody knows. So, in a way, the violence, using violence in electoral exercise, in a system, in a political order where we think we have liberalized politics, where we have got a liberal constitution, I think that takes us a little bit back. We have got a lot of political hypocrisy and pretense that we are in a liberal democracy when we are in a liberal democracy. In my opinion, we had rather say we are not in we are in an illiberal democracy and consolidate that one like China does. Rather than pretending we're in a liberal democracy, there is political liberalization when actually you stand, they arrest you. I think Kyagulanyi now is under ban. He cannot hold even his concerts. They said you can't hold concerts because you made a statement to the effect that the governments
interested in the presidency.
Western governments maybe should not support the military here. Then they say now you can't enjoy our money, and you find another DC closing a radio station because a presidential candidate is speaking, is on that radio TV. The RDC just goes and switches off. A mere RDC is not sent by the Electoral Commission, is not sent by the Minister of Security or whatever. He just switches off and nothing is done. That does not happen in Kenya. We have had presidential candidates not arrested. We have had the security being by and large neutral. Let me say this, even in the 2007 post-election violence, the security held matters better in the sense that the people who are killing each other were not the military. They were not security forces. They were people killing each other, and that's how the military could hold the center together. But if it also became partisan, maybe things would have taken a completely different form. So there is less military intervention in the political competition in Kenya, which has been the case in Uganda. By the way, not under this regime only. In 66, there was a military intervening in political competition. In 71, that was naked, that was not clothed, that was not hypocritical. There was intervention. Of course, 79, even in the UNF, it was military intervention. Removal of Rure was military intervention. Removal of Menaisa was military intervention. And then you have 1985 military intervention, 86 military intervention. So the problem...
Lule political. It was an impeachment.
It was what?
An impeachment.
No, it was also military. It was somehow forced. It was an impeachment under force. You see, military doesn't have to be openly that somebody has come with an APC or a tank and has invaded the state house. We know that there was some force behind the removal of Rure, and after the removal, of course, people were shot at here in Kampala. Anyway, by and large, the total picture is that in Uganda, we still have that political military alliance, especially those in power ally with the military. And by and large, you could say that currently, the NRA, as some people normally put it, the NRM alliance is still very intact. And it was graphically put by President Museveni the other day when the members of parliament wanted to occupy the office. You know, in parliament, there is president's office. And members of parliament were saying that the president's office should remove itself from there so that members of parliament use it as an office. And he reminded them, you fellas, are you aware we captured you or you are not aware? You parliament, we captured you. Are you aware? I think he almost added on, you are still under captivity. So the whole question of saying we have got liberal democracy in Uganda is a fallacy. And that leads to political underdevelopment in Uganda. This is not to vote for even liberal democracy. You either have liberal democracy, you have a liberal constitution and liberal democracy, and you practice that one so that you evolve. Or you have a liberal democracy and you also evolve and develop that one. But to pretend that you have political liberalization when you are not, and President Museveni clearly states it, but maybe we Ugandans don't get it clearly. After the referendum and the opening of the political space legally, he did say that although we have opened up, I know that the movement system is superior. That is a statement that he made. And two, he said that actually the aim here was not necessarily opening up, it was actually Kubejako. We just wanted to get rid of you. And one time I read a book written by him when they were sitting in the bush. I wish I could get hold of it. There was a book titled Combat Liberalism, like in the fashion of Lenin, who also was talking about combat liberalism. Therefore, political liberalism in Uganda is a fallacy. The constitution provides for it, so we have a constitutional order for liberalism, but the practice is illiberal, and that undermines further development of politics in Uganda. You either decide to have a liberal democracy or illiberal democracy and promote either, but not to have both, one on top, the other one underneath.
Interesting, Professor Bear. I just want to bring on Father Awich in that line. You know, Professor has brought it out clearly. In Uganda, once elections are on, even pre-elections, consultations, and towards elections, even before nominations and after nominations, we see a more like a war-like zone situation in Uganda. The military is deployed.
It's a matter of operation.
Tear gas is all over. We register quite considerable number of deaths. Arrests are all over because, of course, the reports come out over and over. And interestingly, the past elections, we had observer missions closed out through the elections. We have internet shutdown. We have literally everything that really would not show that there is any seemingness of a democratic process happening in a country. What do you think? Where do you think is the problem? And comparing with Kenya, how do you compare us with Kenya going from here?
I think the problem lies in still like what I could call the civil competency and discipline of Ugandans. For example, we have laws in place like Kenya has. Say you have computer abuse, computer law
Misuse.
about misuse. You have such laws in place. If you realize the last incident, I think I need to illustrate this clearly. The incident of Kayonga riot, when radios were closed, I think internet were closed, you'd clearly see our civil competence and discipline where somebody would post and say, for us in Natete, we have already started burning government vehicles. How about you in Nakawa? Deliberately inciting. You can see that is an abuse and falling within the law. And that's what I'm calling competency, the civil competency. Now you find the state comes in as a reaction to the civil disobedience. The state doesn't move on a motion of its own to block the people. And in most cases, when the state has moved in, a lot of damage has been done. Now, people forget the damage that had been done before and the point of intervention of the state. And now it is blamed, the state has done this, the state has done this. At that stage, you find, crudely, this is what was happening. Somebody posts and says, for us, in Natete, we have started burning. What are you people waiting there? Ordinarily, this should have been prosecuted. But at that step, where spontaneous things are now happening because of computer abuse or misuse, the state has to come in to maintain law and order. So such occurrences, in most cases, if you study on a case-by-case basis, it's a reaction from the state, not a pro-action like the state moved on a motion of its own. No, in all cases. So I blame that in the civil competency. Maybe the Kenyans respect the law more and they don't use that abuse. But let me also mention that the Kenyans also are aware in their consciousness that above them hangs some senior prosecutor. And that is why you see discipline from both. And that is not a credit, it's a discredit, because a state is supposed to have its own prosecution process. Now, by the time a state or a country believes in a fear from a superior prosecution in the name of ICC, then that is not a very good thing. So the Kenyans are well aware, both those in government and outside government, that should you continue doing this, there's an arm above all of you in the name of ICC. They dragged all these guys there. So that's why you see there's apparent discipline, both in government and outside government. It's that. But at least for us, we are still lucky that our prosecution system has been competent and reign over these law defaulters. So what you see in Kenya, also take it from the position that part of the discipline that they have is not an unborn grown discipline. It's a discipline born by the fear of a superior prosecution, a global prosecution which will take both of you. We are, as Uganda, moved away that in that we can police ourselves, we can discipline ourselves, we can prosecute ourselves. So that is part of the Kenyan discipline. Now, about the political hybrid the professor is talking of course, there are people who chose, like Gaddafi, to have the system that they had in Libya. You have seemingly democratic systems there with its organization. You have the Chinese Communist Party. China ordinarily has other parties. There are many parties in China, but the Communist Party still maintained the reign. Even when out of 1.3 billion people, only 90 million people are members of the party. But that is their system. But I think the system that we chose here, and that Museveni made comment about at the beginning was that it was actually, by far and large, commenting about the choice that people made on the liberalism, the multi-party, so to say. Personally, actually, me, I had reservation. I wanted the movement to continue. And that's what I said in the referendum. And I think Museveni as well, but we let go. Because, for example, for us, we believe in the movement. That under a movement system, you would impeach a minister. Why? Because if a minister is wrong, we see it is wrong. But right now, you can't, because it's so partitioned. And that's why some of us who believed in NRM feared. Right now, even if a minister walked naked from City Square to Parliament, we would just say it is the opposition who has bewitched him. In the past, see how many ministers were censored in the NRM regime that you can't do now in the multi-party. So Museveni's comment about that was warning. For example, even one further professor could have cited this, that you used to go for elective position, and after that, if you lose, you come back to your work, because all of us are in the movement. But now under this political system, the law will come in place where you can't do that because you have already chosen to be partition. How are you coming to serve the civil service in your partition nature? These are some of the ills or the negatives that came with the liberal system. And that is what Museveni was quoting, among others, many. It has its ills. Now, for the challenges that go to pure this or that the professor was saying, we are all undergoing underdevelopment. There are a lot of imperfection yet. So we won't reach there. I mean, not we won't reach there. We shall reach there, but we are not yet there yet. So what you're seeing as making hybrid or not following either or is just stages to the development, to the system, to that pure, what you call pure liberal or the Chinese system or Gaddafi system, if you may wish. So those imperfections are stages to our ultimate development to that. And that is the direction we are going to. So by far, we have managed as Uganda our democratic principles. Of course, procedures and processes, a lot is yet desired to be achieved. But we are acting in good faith, at least as NRM. We are acting in good faith, and that is our direction. And as I said earlier, still we are lucky at this stage. We are disciplining ourselves, we are policing ourselves, and we are grateful for that, without a fear of an hammer from a global angle.
As we continue arresting presidential candidates.
And then the arrest, if I may say, the arrest again is a reaction.
To what?
In other words, government or the state doesn't move on a motion of its own to arrest. If you study case by case, all these candidates were in default.
Of what?
Which you don't see in the Kenyan case.
They
Okay.
defaulted in what?
Against the law.
Which
You want me to start
Yes.
saying
What did Amama Babas do?
No. Let's start with the 2021 elections. Which law?
You see, every arrest, and if it is to be proceeded by prosecution, has its brief facts. Now, I'm not able now to bring the brief facts as it is, that you on this stage and this you did, because those are the brief facts that appear. You're a lawyer, you know it. I cannot summarize each and every brief facts for this. But all I know is that there were violations. And as a matter of principle, the state acts as a reaction, not as a proaction. Not that there's a deliberate policy, let's arrest all of them. Then why were they not arrested at the beginning?
But none of those has ever been successfully prosecuted by the courts of law, implying that they were arrested politically.
I'm glad you say implying, not meaning. That is the implication.
Okay, that is,
implying, I'm saying, I'm glad you're saying that. Because why I'm saying implying is that you see the state, the DPP reserves the right to prosecute or drop a prosecution. And the DPP has cases to prosecute. But there are sometimes within the discretion of the state feels, well, if we go this way, we may not achieve the peace. After all, restraint has been made, why go for the prosecution? That is why under the constitution, the DPP reserves that right to prosecute or not. So the fact that somebody has not been prosecuted, it implies, to use your word, but doesn't mean he was innocent.
Funny. Let me bring in.
And you have had the correct.
I had the Mzungu.
Let me bring in Dr. Deus.
I've had the Mzungu.
What I pick out from here, what he started with, what I found he started with, that's largely Uganda, we fail on issues of civic competence. And that's why probably Kenya is beating us on a democracy. I would want you to just pick your mind on what it is saying. And of course, maybe that is what transcends into the different arrests that we see and all the what happens around the elections. What's your thought?
You know, on several occasions, I have had chance to read my brother's, my brother David Mafabi's, because he's the political director of all this. Usually I read all his extracts, the ideological positions of NRM. And I once in a while I pass a critique, a personal critique on the basis of what I understand as a person. I read, I regurgitate. And on several occasions I have accused him of one thing. You can't, because the president usually blames young people for being ideologically disoriented. I think I'm among them. But I have always asked Mafabi, where is the ideological clarity that you are accusing us of? What are you specifically accusing us of? And if you are saying we are ideologically disoriented, aren't you blaming your own children? Because 77% of all Ugandans are below the age of 35. The youth that they are talking about, who are ideologically disoriented, are all children of NRM. The indiscipline we are referring to, the civic incompetence we are referring to, is all among those born and bred and groomed in the NRM era. And this is where my genuinely for heaven's sake, the intellectual dishonesty begins. And of course, I don't expect honesty in politics, but at least when we are trying to clarify these issues and build society, we must also take part of this blame and agree that we are dishonest. And so when you talk of civic competence, you also talk of the intention of NRM from 1886. And I think, to me, if we don't talk of the pseudo nature of the outcome of actions that they're in, also confessed by the president and also the political philosopher of the NRM, Mafabi, because he's a political advisor. If we are to critique ourselves, then we would be openly, the confessions of the president and Mafabi are an open admission that we have failed ideologically. Because the young people, 77%, all under the age of 35, including some of us who are in the mid-40s or around 40s. We all grew up under NRM. So to accuse us for being incompetent, ideologically disoriented, is to actually confess that we failed. It's an honest view.
To do what? Fail to do what?
Failed to impart the ideology, to impart the competence, to build us for what the outcome would be, to show us the clarity, to rally us on the sidelines of this very well qualified belief in value system, which to me would be whether a movement or party should have. That you have a well laid out idea. You have an idea on which then the population is rallied and which would then whose actions and reactions are in tandem with what you originally intended as political directors.
In that origin, you have put there Mafal, but he was the chief ideology of UPC in Makerere.
Yes, but also in this particular
I hope
case,
you know that.
Yes, I know.
He's my
But in
colleague.
this
He was
case-
2 years ahead of me.
In this case, he's
So I don't know how original
yeah, but I imagine he was
ideology is.
adapted. I imagine he was,
was adapted.
But recently, in
But
his
does
recent
NRM have
article,
an ideology?
in the recent article which I read,
Yeah, it
So
has.
David Mafab was
Yeah,
still
yeah.
ahead of you.
he admitted, David admitted,
Yeah, actually,
that,
according
that
to-
ideology is very important, and without doubt, it's important for every useful party which finally delivers a nation. It's very, very key. But he seemed to point a possibility that the president opted for mercenary politics. He's called it in the write-up. I read every mercenary ideology, whereby, for example, if Awich is a threat to the movement or the political direction, you get a banana and put in his mouth. Then he will keep quiet for a bit time. And I think that's what finally led to indiscipline. The idea of a do or die in politics. We either win or you lose.
What do you
Like
mean
it,
by a
Makerere.
banana in the mouth?
Like
Bread, for
bread.
example.
Sweetened.
Money.
Yes.
I thought
Mercenary.
I thought you should put there cassava.
Yeah, no. So to me, this is very important because then,
Otherwise, the recent.
and you know, young people, and I'm being typical with our society because there's evidence 77% of us, this population, below the age of 35.
Muri bazikuru.
Yes, we are all Bazukuru. Meaning, if we are disoriented, then we were fed on disorientation. We watched disorientation, or we were actually in Runyankore. If you steal while your child, your young
Carrying
baby,
a baby.
is at the back, then you expect the child to do the same. So this is why I want to think that the incompetence either, I don't know, maybe it is deliberate or the system
But-
itself
but
did not aim
incompetence-
at a sort of program, some social program that would whose result would be a disciplined, patient, positive in every way society. And I want to come because this is not an act of God. It's not manna from it's how what he was talking about, for example. It's how, for example, the history of adjudication of political outcomes. And people, when they realize, oh, we have hope in the judiciary, then people say, when they need, oh no, wait, it will be okay. We will see, we'll get the outcome. When you have a complaint, for example, about someone, a powerful person, and you know that the judiciary will independently adjudicate on it. And you say, oh, no, don't worry. I am hopeful that they will do it within the time that is acceptable, because justice delayed is justice denied. Then you calm down. I'm giving one example. So there are very many things that do take place that would help us and those young ones to feel comfortable that whatever will happen is going to be handled competently by an independent party who will not be peddled. For example, where I come from in Makerere, I have had in the past some people say, oh, we will sack you and you will go out there in the courts and you will stay there forever. We will, so they are sure that the courts are holding centers for even the innocent, because those in charge are so much full of impunity. For them, they understand their game, that they have their holding centers. The judiciary is the holding center. We will hold you there. We even have our cadre judges. We will deal with you. So such things, when you are hopeless to that level, then you expect that even the people involved, the young people involved in this case, will know nothing about how they should behave when there is a situation. Because they're helpless. They don't believe that the arms of the state will play their roles, and that they will play them competently within the guidelines or within the confines of the Constitution and all the other laws established. But let me talk about Kenya in general. Me, I'm still very happy because I don't believe in that power is in an individual or is in a position. And those who narrow it to that, I think, especially Africans, I think have a problem. And that's where we need improvement. Because everyone is talking about capturing power, being a president, and that if you don't get it, yes, I know you feel bad, but that's an end game, it's over, it's finished. But look, Raila Odinga on the other side of the aisle, since he started competing, getting 10%, but that gentleman, whether we will celebrate him or not, because I was, at some point, I felt whoever becomes the president, whether hustler or what, if you look closely, he has been the director of democracy, democratization of Kenya. At every stage, he has pushed government to get a better outcome the next 5 years. He has done that. And I have liked the way he has handled himself along the way. That even when you look at what caused violence when they slaughtered 2,000, the time when they went to the ICC, he was not the cause actually. The guys who were involved, those lines, they are this side. He insisted, and so I would want to thank him because he fits well in my worldview of politics and society. That power is held by different groups, and that if everyone played their part at every level, then we would have a sane society. So I would compare him with the people who never became president but were very powerful, like the Reverend
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King, who he insisted that there must be respect for all human beings are created equal, and he died for it. But he never became a president or even a leader of the blacks.
He never vied for
He
this.
never did, but he was a civic leader. So I could even think, to me, Raila Odinga should be happy even if he never became president. He should sit down and count the blessings he is brought to Kenya of keeping on pushing that. Because every time they vote, the next time they get better. Every time they vote, I was a young man during the time of Moi, and that's what I want to end with. And I used to pass through Kenya, going to Tanzania for my university education. It was threatening. It was almost like what I see here. And because you pass through so fast and you were worried. Actually, we are a bit better, a bit. Uganda.
We are very.
But it was like darkness. You would get to Nairobi and you are so worried, and you want to get to the next run away.
And people would warn you, move your passport, move with your, don't move at the night.
And then you would also reach when maybe one guy mother has been beaten. So it was really threatening. But the Kenya now seems to be open and about enjoying a new day, regardless of what happens hereafter. And Sarah is confirming that. And my colleague is also confirming that there are things that they seem to have sort of outgrown, like the military being involved in elections. They have outgrown that, and now they allow everyone to express themselves. Sarah confirmed that they never saw skirmishes of that kind. So thanks to them, now they will also deal with this final tariff problem at some point. And thank you to all the players. We still should thank Kenya for what they are doing going forward.
Interesting, and of course I'll pick your mind on that. Sarah, I want to bring you back on. Yes, Deus has talked and praised Raila for almost being the grandfather of pushing for what we are seeing as literally democracy today. But also Kenya boasts of probably a vibrant civil society organizations, but also the 2010 constitution that introduced and entrenched the unshakable powers of the president that probably would have been the issue, but also there was the issue of decentralization that happened in Kenya.
The devolution.
Yeah, that of course some of these could one say that are some of the areas that have really shaped Kenya to what they are today, that we are seeing that there is a transition that is happening, but the country is equally unstable.
The role,
Yes.
the role of the constitutional design.
Constitutional
Constitutional
design,
and legal design in
yes,
Kenya.
then the civil society networks, the different civil society bodies are strong and vibrant.
Yeah. Demian, I first want to demystify two things insinuated by my friend and Obi in terms of Birante solidarity. I found Awich Pollar. One is blaming violence and chaos on people. I think it's the biggest dishonesty of that one can allude to. And I want to refer him to President Museveni's historic quote. The problem of Africa is not its people. It's the leaders who rule for too long. You go and read Museveni's book on what is Africa's problem, and you will realize that as much as he did a proper identification of the issues of Africa, then he chose to be the biggest problem himself. But it's the biggest hypocrisy to blame violence, to blame chaos, to blame disorder on a peaceful people. I also want to refer you to the description of Churchill, the part of Africa, beautiful with its people. Ugandan people are beautiful. Ugandan people are not violent. Ugandan people are not chaotic. It is the rudimentary elite who capture power that have turned the violent tools of the state against its people. Again, to blame civic competence. Civic competence of who? Of the army? Of the people? Look at the civil-military relations in this country. If it wasn't that, why do you people move? Not you in particular. All government officials move with 3 convoys, scared against the people you claim to lead with the majority. Why are you shielded in convoys? Isn't it your hypocrisy? And you running with a guilty consciousness of brutalizing people with the Uganda and its resources? Why are you shielded in convoys of military everywhere? Why does the president move with members as if Uganda is a war zone? What is he scared of? And you scared of your crimes and guilty consciousness, which are Ugandans terrorists?
We attacked
You are running away from your shadows, and you cannot accuse the beautiful people of being violent. We shall not accept that.
They will force it on you.
No, we shall not accept. Going back to Kenya, Kenya has walked a journey of nation building. We had a discussion here on what are the steps of nation building. Nation building must go, you must establish national character, national values, national language, national identity, then build institutions, build the social programs that help the people and build the civic competence of the people to participate in their democracy. So when you look at that journey, right from independence, the fight, the Maji fights, the fights of Mzee Jaramogi, we have the historians here. I would not bother so much with history. But the Kenya's fight for democracy, the books that have been authored on the quest for democracy in Kenya, If you read Kenyatta as not yet Uhuru, if you read Tom Mboya as facing Mount Kenya, if you read, and indeed Mount Kenya is still a problem, Jaramogi, Mzee Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, facing Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya is still a big question in the politics of the country. If you look at all that, and I happen to have joined the youth activism in 2000, and I used to move across East Africa in my mad youth activism. I saw the likes of Ruto, now
she
president.
used to be my real member of parliament for women, but she was my member of parliament in the heart. She stood for Mushenyi. We were
So
excited about the youthful.
Yeah. So if you look at the acts of Ruto, the president-elect, who was the radical youth winger of Moi, Deus did describe in bits of the terror under Moi. So at the time I started going to Kenya, but Ruto was a young minister in the office of the president, and they were described as the young Turks, perpetuating evil, perpetuating violence. At the helm, you had the Biwots doing whatever they were doing, Nicholas Biwott, and then you had the youth wingers and the youth ministers now where Ruto belonged. And he has been in government since 2000. So when you hear the claim of deep state, of hustlers, it is a good campaign slogan, just hoodwink young people, but which doesn't mean any sense. But away from Ruto, and he's now a president-elect, going to the journey that Kenya has walked through the fight for independence, where the Kenyattas were arrested, Mzee Jaramogi arrested, then when Jaramogi was released before Mzee Kenyatta, and then he was supposed to be Kenya's first post-independence president, and then he said, no, but my brother is in jail. I want him to be the first president so that he can be released. So you had Jaramogi giving away his opportunity to be president in order to secure the freedom of a brother in the struggle by naming him as a president, and then the colonialists had no condition but to release him. But also you need to look at the question of the white settlers in Kenya who used to dominate the Westlands. The Westlands used to be the most bourgeoisie place for Nairobi, but now there is Karen where the likes of Raila and Ruto stay, and then Uhuru, whose house is next to State House, maybe because of the history of his family, and he can as well share a gate with State House if he wanted, but just uses the different side. So Kenya has walked this journey of independence through struggles on the streets. There's a time at the removal of Moi where the civil society, the broader civil society, the NGOs, the church, the Law Society of Kenya, and the private sector worked hard to bring down Moi's dictatorship that had been so entrenched, and with acts almost similar to what is happening in Uganda today. But the people fought and removed Moi. So after that removal, the people who were used to being on the street protesting then took government. And one time there was a joke that the minister Minister for Roads, forgot and joined protesters against bad roads. So protesting against himself. So, but that's what built the civic competence that we see today. That time in Nairobi University, which is just below State House, the students were always striking, like 2 times a week. So you would be in Nairobi and you hear our likes of, well, hey. But I don't know, they would not be killed in big numbers like we see in Makerere sometimes. So the level of brutality had limits also, even under Moi. But people who opposed him, then some people would disappear. Then we had stage-managed road accidents. stage managed plane crashes, so many things that would happen. And so Kenya overcame that brutal regime and ended the one-party state by Moi, and he ushered in the phase of multipartyism, the second phase of multipartyism, with the civic, now the people who are running civic agencies taking on government, with the likes of retired Chief Justice Dr. William Tunga, who was then a civic actor in the Ford Foundation and civil society constituency, coming into government and putting reforms. So there was a deliberate effort of democratization after Moi, putting reforms, expanding civic space, and that's where the credit that Dr. Kamunyu gives to Raila comes in. And the likes of Chibachi, even Raila at one time had to dissolve his own party, join the KANU, and then later he said he joined the KANU to dismantle it. And indeed, after being its Secretary General, later he walked away with so many principles in KANU and formed the Rainbow Alliance under the Orange Movement for the new constitution. The Orange Movement went into the referendum for the 2010 constitution. So beyond that, then you had the contested 2017 elections, where again Raila led a legal challenge to expand democratic freedoms. The Supreme Court decisions have largely guided this election, which we have to credit to
The hindsight, even.
yes,
The hindsight
yes,
of what it can do.
yes, which we have to credit to. As an observer, I will give it an 80% pass. Because other than the last 3 days towards the announcement, this election was beautiful, it was credible, it was verifiable, it was peaceful. Nobody arrested any contender. The military never came out of the barracks. The only time I saw the military while I was in Kenya was when the army commander was handing over to the new army commander, an event that the army presided over themselves. Even the president had no need to attend. So that is the level of the civic competence. Also, the 2017 Supreme Court decisions strengthened the robustness of democratic institutions. Because the new constitution in 2010 had ushered in an era of public scrutiny for appointments of people who occupy public office.
That one.
Yes, and that expanded space. If you are contesting for a position in government, from commissioner, they are all televised. From commissioner in government. The others are advertised and people can file comments, but from commissioner they are televised. When William Tunga was being recruited as Chief Justice, we all watched the interviews.
Yes.
When the ministers are being approved, you watch the interviews. Anybody with a comment, any member of the citizen who feels that you do not pass the integrity test to hold that office, brings the complaint and it is attended to. So that is the expansion of the democratic space that the new constitutional era ushered in. So whatever was pending for implementation from the constitution then got expanded from judicial activism and the courts in terms of a transparent, credible, verifiable election. The courts gave clear directions on what a free and fair election must look like. It must be transparent, it must have larger citizens' participation, it must have unfettered freedom of expression, it must be verifiable. If you say, that's why I'm saying I want to know the number of Kenyans that voted. So if the technology used says 14 million, and as we went around to observe, I even took videos of the technology, immediately the voter would scan their ID, all the details come out, and there were no issues of the technology has failed to start like we were seeing. You know, I went to observe 2021. I went to Ntinda Primary School for the opening. We stood for 2 hours and the machine could not go on. The person did not know how to operate it. Later when they called and we were told and internet had been switched off, then they were told how to operate it. Then we took the elections started 4 hours later. So immediately the machine was easy to use, scan details come in, but also as you bring in details of a new voter, the information of who has voted would come in, including those that have voted on secondment. Like your ID could not scan properly, and then the people verified and agents confirmed you are a voter and you are the one on the vote, and then you. Yes. So there were 2 categories of immediate verification by the machine, then where the machine lacked verification and people confirmed, and then the presiding officer endorsed that you vote. So you would see the data. Those who voted straight from they were calling them the Kenya Independent Electoral Commission machines, KIEMs. Then those who voted on secondment, then you would see the number of people that have voted at this time and those who are pending to vote. So when the Supreme Court said they need verifiable data, the technology must produce verifiable data backed up, it's important to note that in our 2016, Amama Mbabazi's Supreme Court petition, when the petitioner demanded for backup information from our technology machines, the Electoral Commission said it does not exist. And we don't know whether if the Bob Wine petition had progressed, whether there would have been backup for technology to prove, to verify the registered voters that voted. And the reason that kind of technology is hidden is clear, because you have multiple voting. We also videos of policemen, ballot staffing, you know, the kind of vulgarization that we call elections in this country. So maybe if you may allow me to conclude on that point, and I've said on several platforms that what happens in Uganda is not an election. We should stop abusing the word election, because it is simple, it has clear meaning, it has clear statistics, and we need to find a name for the vulgarization that NRM propagates in the name of elections in this country.
Interesting also on that one. I would want to bring Professor, I know you want to add on a little from what Sarah said, but I want to pick your mind on the role the coalitions play in the probably in the smooth running of the elections, the coalitions and their interests on the process of the elections, and probably could it be partly the cause of the kind of democracy we are seeing. That even Uhuru recently had to disband his Jubilee and went to Raila just for purposes of seeing.
No, Jubilee joined the Azimio coalition. Yeah, it is still a party. It joined a different coalition.
So
I want to pick your mind on that kind of arrangement.
Thank you. But before I go that, I wanted to add on the debate about is it ideology or mindsets or whatever, a little bit. The assumption that Ugandans are ignorant. Actually, I think when NRM came into power, it came with that assumption that all of us, all Ugandans were ignorant. And he needed to go for re-education in Chankwanzi. By then it was mchaka everywhere. It was not only in Chankwanzi, and it is still being done. So the assumption is that people are ignorant. I wish I could go there one of these days. I've never gone there. They have never invited me there. By the way, the director was my student, current director. And see this re-education, how they are going to re-educate me. I am not assuming that I am very knowledgeable. I'm not. But I want to see this re-education where the assumption is that everybody who goes there, imagine an adult, you go there and they assume that you have come, you are ignorant, and they are supposed to help you. And this has gone far. Now it has gone to the village.
You to love yourself and your country.
Before you love patriotism, whatever. There is now an assumption that even the villagers, the people in the village are ignorant. I don't know. My Uganda is still in the nursery. I don't know whether what I'm going to say is in Runyankore. But a charm. You see, the mindset, we have wrong minds and they have to be put right. have rusted. The assumption is that these people in the government have got better minds and the rest are a mass of ignorant, rusty people with wrong mindsets. Emitwe bagichamure. Is that Uganda? Bagala kuchamure emitwe ya chama. Something like that, you know? That assumption will not allow liberal democracy in this country because emitwe ya fena ni chama. So mindset change, which began with this ideology of muchaka that you go there, they teach you the history. I would want to go there and see the history of Uganda. They are going to teach me. Then the ideology that Dr. Kamunyu is talking about, we are ideologically disoriented. I don't know where their ideology was oriented from. I don't know what they mean. We are disoriented and what disoriented us. So that assumption that we should, in my opinion, those in the government or even the so-called ideologies should create platforms like we are here, and we all share. Nobody should claim has a correct line, but we can all contribute. Even me or her, whatever. We do not first assume that so and so is ignorant. Ogende kuchamure. Kakati they are going to go to the villages to kuchamure mitwe. My late mother, by 1969, she was growing nuts using a tractor. Since that time, there is no tractor that is being used in my area. Where did the heads go wrong? Not to use tractors because they are not there. They were there by that time. So anyway, this assumption to me is very politically dangerous, to assume the ignorance of everybody and you are coming to impart. By the way, in education, we have run away from that imparting. We facilitate learning, we don't impart knowledge. But there is an assumption out there. My colleague here, he would want to come and impart. If I went to Changwazi, he would come and start imparting. What are you imparting? The moment you assume that everybody is ignorant and you want to impart, definitely you can't have liberal democracy because you first assume ignorance to everybody, and whatever they are talking about, you can't register it, you can't digest it, you can't accept it. There can never be a give and take. There can never be negotiations. There can never be dialogue. Dialogue to take place, it must be the presumption of dialogue, even by scholars like Habermas, is that the dialoguers must assume that they are both ignorant and both knowledgeable, and therefore they are going to help each other. But for you to come and assume in the name of Muchamu, the mindset wrong, I am going to correct it in a certain direction, is problematic. Coming back at coalitions. Coalitions are also possible under liberal democracy. Liberal politics. You must have a liberalized political space to allow people to interact and talk. But if you don't allow people to interact, they go on radio, you arrest them. They want to have a rally, you arrest them. The other day, police arrested people. DP is going to their office. Listeners there, can you imagine citizens who belong to a party like DP? You are going to the office. I saw them even knocking. They were knocking. They were not pushing. And then the police pounced. When I'm going to my party headquarters, for heaven's sake, you are a member of the NRM secretariat, you go to your party. Must you ask for permission for police to go to your party headquarters? How on earth can you arrest somebody going to his party offices? Now, when you bottle people, they become unsated. They become grasshoppers. And therefore, you know, that illustration, that analogy, that metaphor of grasshoppers in the calabash. You know, when they cannot see who is who, when it is there, they are there in the darkness and they are squeezed in a small place. When it meets another one, it thinks that is the enemy who put it in the calabash and grabs it, and you find the head is off. So you have a situation here. You are not allowed to meet. You are not allowed to call on your members. You are not allowed to have your branches, so that you dialogue with your party members and maybe you give them a program that I'm going to form a coalition with the other one, or if I go and I'm going to meet in a certain place, I'm not going to be taken to prison. So in Kenya, after that noism had been overcome, and the people, including the civil society, civil society was allowed to come in. Here, civil society is being closed every other day that you have become political. Civil society is supposed to be political, not partisan, but political. What is politics? Politics is about contestation of power and ideas. If there was a free space for contestation, possibly we would have those coalitions coming up, others exercising their right to be sycophants, others exercising their rights to be pumpkins, but we allow pumpkinism to go on, and whoever people reject, they reject you, but you are not beaten because you have decided to go. And then there is a question of use of money. Maybe Sarah will tell us what happened in Kenya. The use of money in Uganda, and moreover state funds, buying people, and then you find people celebrating that they have bought somebody. That is also undermining further development of democracy, even if it is not democracy, by the way. Democracy is a generic word we are using here, but possibly we want an orderly society. We have failed to evolve an orderly society in Uganda. It is to whom it may concern. And then there are those who come and say, you have got a Mitwemi charm. You are supposed to be fine-tuned, panel beaten and taken to Chankwanzi. I don't know why they have never taken me there. And given the correct line. You know,
recruit you soon.
And give you the correct line to think properly because you are thinking wrongly. I think coalitions in Kenya have somehow worked because there is a political liberalization atmosphere for people to exercise their rights and minds, their mistakes, their psychophancy, their unprincipled whatever, but allow political space. But here in Uganda, that is not allowed. They will arrest you or even blacklist you. They will put these these cameras around Chagulani's place, so that when Kamunyu is going there, the following day, they will fall up on him and they say, why did we see you going to Chagulani's place? And the people are supposed to be free to go wherever they want to go. These days, by the way, is something, let me say it even here in public, there is a sense in which even some most ideologies, even of NRM, are not free. They have lost their freedom. Some of our colleagues, our comrades there, when you ring them now, they cut you off. They say, I am busy, I am at a wedding, when he is not at a wedding. Because should they hear you are talking to Mwambustya, then you are in trouble. Can you imagine a citizen talking to another citizen has now been criminalized? So when you reach that atmosphere and you have a country where there is no freedom of association, assembly, and expression, and there is that culture of fear, then even coalitions will not go very smoothly. They will always tell you, no, we have a correct line. You can, for heaven's sake, pay somebody from taxpayers' money 87 million, and you say that's a correct line. In a banana republic like ours, a least developed country, and you are just paying people anyhow, and you say that's a correct line. And then when somebody is going to hustle and grow certain crops, then all of a sudden you say your mind is wrong, let's come and twist it. You know, government came up with a correct line and told people in Teso to grow sorghum that you can't eat, that you can only use for brewing. And the breweries are no longer buying it. The people are suffering with sorghum. They went somewhere and told people to grow kamurari. In the villages where the people's mindsets are supposed to be tuned, they grew kamurari. Kamurari never got any market anywhere. They suffered with it. Now I hear people, my friend...
in Busaga, they refused advice and went for sugarcane, and they got in trouble. We gave a correct line, they refused.
A correct line, I understand. I am now hearing in this parish development model, they are telling people certain crops to grow. First of all, I am not here critiquing the whole notion of parish development model, but we didn't discuss it. See, we have not provided an atmosphere where we could have input, or Ugandans could have input, and so we have something that we all own. But since you assume that everybody is ignorant, and you are going to help I hear the Minister of ICT the other day. I was listening to him on TV, and he was saying you have to grow 4 crops. 4 crops. Who is determining which crop grows where in Uganda, and why should you dictate the crops that people should grow everywhere in the same place? Even when you're in Kampala, you are supposed to grow what now? To grow coffee in Kampala? Anyway, coalitions, to answer your question, coalitions have somehow helped to bring down tensions. Like continental Europe, I mean the Western democracy, but in continental Europe, unlike America, which is purely so partisan, they and especially parliamentary systems, in some parliamentary systems, they have designed a constitutional arrangement where during elections, and the voters there, of course, are more civically competent, a party does not even win 30%. I think in Germany last time the winner had 26% only. And then it is allowed to form coalitions without having undue constraint. They formed coalitions in such a manner that people know that even if I vote him or her, ultimately we all have chances of going to parliament. Now, like in Kenya, where the problem is going to be, for example, they of course they have balanced their parliament, which I like, by the way, the outcome of the voting, because they are almost at par also in parliamentary elections. And I think even Odinga's side, Azimio, has more currently, but on the other one
Azimio has the majority governors and the majority members of parliament.
Yes, but on the other hand, I think in terms of I think governors, it is Kenya Kwanza.
No, Kenya Kwanza is only the Senate, and with
the
one
Senate
vote.
with only one vote. Now these ones are getting the presidency, and the presidency is very powerful, and the Senate. But again, the other ones have got parliament and the governors, and you find everybody is inclusive. And finally, whether Ruto means what he says or not, I want to credit the speech I had, his victory speech, where if he's pretending, of course we can't go into his head and know what he's saying, but at least outwardly he did say that he is ready to work with everybody, and the vengeance or revenge is not on their menu. But the victory speech of our president here, afterwards, the first statement, he said, we are going to eliminate. Our next agenda is to eliminate opposition. Not to work with them, but to eliminate them.
He warned the Catholics.
And in the other time, the other victory speech, in the other year, he said, those who we have defeated had better look for another land elsewhere. I don't think, he said it. I am a Museveniist, I follow him, that they had better get land elsewhere. So I thought after winning, you should find the way of being magnanimous, even if you are pretending to say that we shall work together, even if we have won. You see, let me use the vernacular for those who may understand it. They can explain to their friends better. In such a situation, when you have won, you should celebrate, but not boast. In our language there we say, oyesime konkereka kwesimirana. Kwesimirana is to boast that you see, we have defeated you people. You better go and get land elsewhere. We are going to eliminate you. You should celebrate your victory, but not boast about your victory to create the other people's minds now to go berserk. So I think we need to have a reform in our language. We have to have a reform in our constitutional design, design the situation in such a way that those who do not win, at least have a say in the governance of their country, because Uganda is not yet a nation state. It is still trying to create a nation state. And nation building requires accommodation and tolerance of all different people, so that in future we create a nation. But we cannot have this nation when there is no rule of law, when there is no constitutionalism. A country like Uganda, which is evolving, cannot evolve as a nation on the model of Europe. The model of Europe was using force. In the 21st century and beyond, you can't use force. So at the same time, so you cannot force people to be Ugandans and think alike and follow the same line, the correct line. No. What we can do is we can build a nation around certain principles of the Constitution. For example, like the American model, they say amendment number this, all of them believe in it. Article this, all of them believe it. But that is when you accept that this Constitution is aligned to your ideology. But I think what we have now, we have a liberal constitutional order, but the ideology, the mindset is different. We have old wine in new bottles, and one way or the other, either the wine will get wrong or the bottle will break.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That was an extensive one. And of course, it ushers us into the break. And from there, we'll come and, of course, have more conversation on the transition, but also we'll end with the legacy of Kenyatta. Follow this conversation. We are on YouTube. We're on streaming live on Civic Space TV, YouTube channel, and also on Chat Show UG hashtag and the Civic Space TV hashtag. Please drop in your comments. Let's have a conversation and get to learn much more and probably see what we can learn from Kenya going forward. Let's return after this.
The Citizens Chatroom happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
Welcome back from that short break. We're having a very interesting conversation here. There's a lot of learning and unlearning from what has happened and what is transpiring in Kenya. The whole electoral process. We have people that have been on ground, and we have experts that have been following the politics there. But also interesting, they also largely is that they understand the politics of the region. So it's important to always be tuned into a Civic Space TV here to learn much more. We have a conversation ongoing on Civic Space TV, but also on a Twitter, on a Chat Show UG hashtag and a Civic Space TV hashtag. Facebook and TikTokers, we are also a part of the conversation. Let's have these comments and conversation coming. And right into the break, while we had the break, returning, I wanted to bring on Founder Awich from the comments. I know you want to make a little reactions from what has been said, but importantly is I need to just bring in the 2010 Constitution of Kenya, of course, introduced and made serious safeguards that checked the powers of the president. But also, on the other hand, in Uganda, the clauses
including having a running mate who becomes a deputy president, not an assistant president.
A good one. Yeah, that's a good one. And of course, here in Uganda, clauses of the term limits and age limit were scrapped off. So one would ask, in observance of the rule of law, which breeds in peaceful democratization process, as Uganda, what must be done to promote respect of rule of law for a peaceful and fair transition of power? Looking at all this.
What must be done? There are many things that must be done. You also cite the Kenyan Constitution. I will comment on that. But as you earlier said, there are comments that my friends made that I would like to just put a few bullet points on. First of all, the comments came after I had said something, and I thank them for that because
you provoked us.
Because one way of assessing that you have said something of value is a comment from the people. If you say something and people are like, let it pass, then you have said nothing. So I'm glad that my comments provoked their reaction, which I take it in good faith. Now, the comment I want to make is that doctor seems to say that if you produce your children and they go wrong, you take all liability. Well, maybe not. He cites 77% of the population, and if they are disoriented, then who's to take blame? You see, there are so many factors that lead to the civil activism that we are saying, the civil competency. One of the things is technology itself. You can't stop technology. Technology is advancing every day. Information sharing, transparency, and all that, and new innovations and importations. So people are more into the domain, such that you may not even take blame for a deviation in the family itself. And that's why some people, you find them even taking some different gender orientation, even at home when the mother and parents are straight. So you can't therefore say, because 77% grew up in NRM, then they should take liability for their mind behavior. So there are
But
many
at
of these
least
factors.
don't blame them. If
Yes.
you can't take liability.
The other
Don't
thing
blame
also
them.
is also the NRM conduct itself, the liberal tendency of NRM. NRM came with a vigorous liberal tendency. For example, the professor can contend, but things like demystifying a gun. People used to think guns are for the soldiers, for the police, and they could use it to terrorize. There was a deliberate attempt to demystify the gun itself. Let everybody know, demystify this instrument of violence. Okay? And a lot of this political talk that was encouraged. So all this multiplicity of factors lead to this. So in other words, while you industrialize, you are causing pollution. Pollution as a result of industrialization. So the byproduct of all these good aims and activities of NRM produces this. So you can't say, therefore, well, you may say take liability, but I just want to say the mindset or the civic competency of this 77, if you may want NRM to take the blame, there are multiplicity of factors that form their mind, which is really not an NRM fault. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the assumption that Ugandans have a bad mind. A professor says that I don't think NRM assumes that Ugandans have a bad mind. I don't think so. If you notice NRM at its inception, it is actually, there was a common joke that would say that NRM, that our line is very, very clear.
Correct.
We know what the people want, meaning that the whole idea is people-centered. In other words, you have just associated with the people to know what they want. You are not even pressing in their mind what they want.
Why would
you are just
say
lucky
that the people's line is clear?
No, we said our line. It is our line is very, very clear. That is one.
And which one is wrong?
Two is the, of course, the mind of some political organizations,
Like
which you don't
us
agree.
here,
So two is that we know what the people want, meaning that the people are in the center of it all. We're just lucky to analyze and see what they want and work according to what they want. And that's what President Museveni said on the 17th, 18th, 19th. We were in State House for 4 days for a SEC meeting. We were staying in Lake Vic Hotel, moving every morning to State House. He presented a paper saying mobilization is about people-centeredness. Know what the people want, whether they want roads or hospitals. Do what the people want. That is when you will bring them on your side. It's not the traditional siasa, in quotes and quotes, the mudomo, the blah blah. So it's not true that NRM thinks that people have a distorted mind and should orientate it. I think that is an interpretation of maybe packaging of some cadres who don't package it well. But the core set of NRM is pro-peopleness. People, we know what the people want. We want what the people want. So I just wanted to make that clear. The last one I wanted to make was the traits of fear. President Museveni is one of the very liberal persons, to the extent that even oppositions feel safe. Now, if it is true that there are some cadres who have manifested fear to you. We once said,
don't single out of
you in plural. The manifestation is one time we were discussing with Otafire of cadres who are non-decisive, those non-rooted. I don't know whether it is the same word Sarah asked me about in Kinyankole a few hours back, but I think Otafire call it a batesi. A batesi, I think those who are not firm, who can take decisions, who negotiate things. But a true NRM cadre who knows that he's telling the truth shouldn't have that fear, Professor. For example, me, Awich, I can live here. If you wanted us to drive in the same car, I'll drive you up to home. I don't fear anything. So those shaky Batesi cadres, you leave them alone. But Museveni wants everybody to be free to discuss, to talk people with different school of thought. So ignore those Batesi, but for me and for other cadres who are firm and sure of what they're saying, they're free to associate with anybody, not to cut a phone and arrange a wedding when he's not in a wedding, that we can discuss with Professor when he has said his views and says, Major Awich, I left my car home, dropped me home, and I will not drive while praying that this car is tilted dark.
Why don't you invite me to go and also lecture in Changwanzi?
Yeah, I can. There's nothing wrong with that. I can do that. So I wanted to make those 3 comments. Now, back to your question is safeguards. We have built safeguards, and every country builds safeguards. Of course, the nearest safeguards you can say, for example, first taking through procedural aspects. The procedural aspects is that Electoral Commission should be appointed transparently, which is done. Laws about the elections should be in place, which we try.
Early enough. And you do it early enough.
Facilitate the Electoral Commission with the logistics, that is enough. Maintain peace itself, that is there. Now, the election activity itself, what happens thereafter? You have judiciary that you're talking about. We have had multiple petitions in court, with the last one being a withdrawal from the petitioners themselves in Supreme Court. Now, that is one of the safeguards. There are several safeguards, of course, but those are the core safeguards that can be made. And to have a strong state machinery, that I had said that we should not wait for ICC to police us. Our safeguards is we can manage our affairs, we don't go into anarchy. And that is it. So the legal, the substantive law, the constitutional and procedural aspects are there for safeguards. Plus the judiciary that now comes in to adjudicate in case of disputes. We have had several presidential petitions, as I said, including the last one being withdrawn. So I think we have enough safeguards, but more can be argumented. And as done in other jurisdictions, courts can interpret the law, because many of these laws are made by human beings. And sometimes some people want to take it to their advantage. And we all know that laws are only interpreted inside court. If it is interpreted outside court, that is your opinion. So, like the Kenyans interpreted it, because somebody can interpret Section 138 differently. It's only in the right forum, Professor. Courts is the right forum. Anything outside that is an opinion. So,
can I chip in?
Yeah, you can ask. Yes.
After elections and after the petitions, the Constitution, the Supreme Court, and actually also the observers have recommended electoral laws review, and the government has consistently refused to attend to that. Is that being in line with democracy?
I don't know whether I think there are several laws which were reviewed. But also to strengthen your point is that you remember, what is it called? The group led by Oloka Nyango, which also were core petitioners to
Amukas.
Yes, Amukas came up with their grounds which were listed. I think those grounds
Where
were
did those proposals go?
those grounds were tackled. The Mukasi ground, they were tackled. But also remember, when this becomes recommendations, the only work the state does is to table a bill. It will not have command to say, since court said this, we want it this way. It will still be debated in the normal legislative process.
But it has
so
never
those
tabled.
which didn't get captured, I think, could be in either the logistical framework, either in terms of time or the money there too. But everything is taken in good faith, including that Tolokonyango part of the ruling of the Supreme Court. Short of that, the country itself per se should be stable for all these safeguards to be guarded. And it is true, to every inch of the country, the state and the government is in place. There's no anarchy at all. So we have a fertile ground to let now courts to argument and discuss various interpretations so that we keep in line.
Interesting. Deus, would you want to say what as because then we transition into Kenyatta's legacy, where we want everyone just to have their thoughts on uninterrupted.
No, I think I would return to the denial that when your children, maybe if you mature them, if they are of age, they have their own homes, one could say, and one way of mature is actually make them competent. But if you grew me up to depend on you, and then you release me, and you expect me to be a competent, independent person, that's not right. In this case, I'm talking about a lack of a deliberate framework, a framework that deliberately rallies young people to behave in a way expected towards building a nation state where we are competent enough even to build these institutions, strengthen them ourselves. Because in my view, it's not that institutions are absent. They are there, but they are weak. They are vulgarized intentionally. And where you come in to accuse us, including myself, of disorientation, is when you accuse me of disorientation, it's when I also begin thinking of what you probably did when I was growing up to make me competent. And this is where I've been asking, ideological did not do what you did.
The omission or commission. The omission or commission,
to make
yes.
me competent. That's why I've been wondering, and I've always asked my father, just the messages, bring out our ideology clearly. I don't understand it. Because
does it exist?
Socio-economic transformation.
Who sings it?
That's the ideology.
Who enjoys it? I see just every other time I meet with my colleagues, and I am in real fellowship with the NRM, but I'm being truthful. As you realize, what is on? It's all like mercenary. And I understand him from his last article, where he says we opted for mercenary ways as opposed to ideology. So I felt that was a very important confession, which brought my argument and my questioning to the end. I am actually not going to ask him again, because when you say mercenary ideology, it means you are pragmatic in your approach, but in a way that would only benefit the times, and that can't take us to the direction that we envisaged from the beginning, which an ideology traditionally
which direction did we?
Socio-economic transformation, all these things that I hear.
No, but socio-economic transformation for who? Ideologically, you must be very clear.
And that's why
but nobody accuse people of being reactionary. These fellows are the ones who are reactionary.
So I just ask myself,
there is no class analysis. You are paying people millions, and others you are paying them peanuts, and you say you are progressive. Progressive means you must have an agenda for social justice. That's where progressivism
I know you are a director
begins.
in the NRM, and this is where in the NRM, which is really critical because this is the institution which is supposed to be the hang point or the shelf of NRM ideology.
Why don't they invite us to engage them one of these days?
And
we see that
and this is
progressive
where,
ideology of
for
yours.
me, this is where my confusion
So
is,
does it
and this is where I
You
get
invite us.
lost because
will.
I am not.
dare.
I did sciences. I didn't do history at university, but I read, and I'm very happy to read these things and understand them, and even exchange with seniors about them, and I have some fair understanding. So I've always asked myself, what is this? Which business are we in? But the other week, I think when you last wrote, I got the answer from Mafari. And he was referring to Mzee that he said, no, let's settle for mercenary ideology. Meaning, you act.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, he wrote it. And my answer finally came, but after a very long time. Now I realize, no, this talking to ideology, and I see it in our fellowships where you are a director. So I expect that this clarity be the preoccupation of those who are anchoring or who are managing the shelf of a rallying point for NRM.
So you leave it to us. We shall explain.
National
Mafabi is not part of the
but
self.
But you see,
It's not part of the
he's
self.
a presidential advisor on
But it's
political
not the
affairs.
self. That is
He's the
government.
ideologue, and whatever he advises the president as a chair should trickle down to you. And I have heard him challenge you, and maybe one of the reasons why he say people is an invitation for you to really begin building a system that converts us, that makes us competent. I saw the director of mobilization also talking about it on TV.
Who is that?
Seninde?
No, director.
I think it is Seninde.
No,
Okwir?
And he was talking about competence as a big problem. And maybe we must admit this, and then we go back to the drawing board and work towards, even if it was.
But how can we, Deus, sorry to interject, how can we talk of civic competence in a country which has, because how does civic competence come in? It comes in from debates, from exposure, knowledge and skills, from association, freedom of expression, freedom of access to information. How can that competence among the citizens come in a country where you have 15 laws to contradict Article 29 on freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of association?
Actually, I have realized that people know these things. I've actually realized
Yeah, people are not ignorant.
people are not ignorant.
Yes,
about
but
what
the
I have realized,
expression.
and what I got last week was the mercenary component, which waters down everything. And I see it, yesterday I was again going, the young people are rambling, and it's all about, and Mafabi answers it finally. It's all about money and getting, cutting deals and seeing where to get the next thing. And it has no component of liberation, of Pan-Africanism is this empty thing which remains on the lips and in talk. You don't sit in the young people and they're all chasing this one thing, money and survival, and I understand them. But if they are the ones, like this core group which I'm talking about, if they are the ones going to direct politics of the future, and that politics guide development agenda,
To change mindset.
then there is a very big problem. And this big problem could swallow someone at some point.
But you see, Kenyans also have that whole mindset. At least they have, they have interests in all these formations that they create, the coalitions that they jump here and there. But at least they are guided on some ideology, which I think
Guided
is
by
like,
who?
I think their history says it, because then we see that how they play out their politics, even with the differences. It's not as easy.
No, for me, I was worried until last week. So now I know that it's absent. It's a mercenary approach to issues. And so my my mind has changed. I will not ask those small questions again. Because I thought, having studied from Tanzania, I was an enthusiast of reading a lot of Nyerere's ways. And I was very interested in the Marxists, reading privately about them. And now, more than ever before, and I involved with the president ideology. And I thought it was serious. But last week, Mafabe answered it. Because when we have a mercenary approach to
I don't know what
politics,
Mafabi was saying. I think I should better explain
if
more.
we are talking about mercenary approach politics, then we must quickly and very, very fast go towards interests, very, very fast, such that even thieves can formulate their own interests and push for them. And that's if you saw me post, and I'm serious about it. It's high time we created a national crisis on several issues, including corruption. Everyone should be corrupt, so that we quickly negotiate our way. I am being sincere because you see, we must stress the master of corruption. Because there are those who are benefiting from it and they seem not to, you know. So we must all be corrupt in a way that we stress the master of it, and then we design interests along that and we discuss. Cut this, I cut this. This business of morality, why we are behaving unfairly here, must end, because then that would be in ideology and state building nation states, those values and beliefs would be embedded in an ideological complex in a way that people are rallied to love, finally love and cherish the territory in which they live and function.
That
But
conversation
now-
is something that we need to have.
Yeah, but now we can't
Yeah, it's a deep one.
do anyway.
It's a deep one, but we need to get into because time was also is fast spent on Kenyatta's legacy, and I would want to just bring in an introduction. Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto ascended to Kenya's presidency in March 2013. This followed a contested poll that they won with a slim majority of 50.3% of the votes cast. They took office shortly after the promulgation of the Kenya's progressive constitution in 2010. That gave them a unique responsibility of providing leadership on its implementation and entrenchment. So during the second term of their presidency from 2017 to 2022, Uhuru and Ruto's government has focused economic strategy on core aspects of Kenya's Vision 2030, which they labeled as the Big Four agenda. The strategy rested on 4 pillars. These were food security, affordable housing, universal health care, and manufacturing, and of course job creation. Through it, the government sought to implement projects and policies aimed at accelerating economic growth and transforming our lives. So it's from here that I would want us to, as our panelists, to just our thoughts on how has Uhuru lived up to his plan while in office. I would want to start with Sarah as how we're moving.
Maybe a little bit of who is Uhuru. So you have a child born in privilege. His father's favorite son, if you go by the pictures that we see in history, going with him in office and all that as a child, later sent to the United States to study. He comes back because he came back in Kenya towards the 2002 elections under the so-called Uhuru Project under Moi. And many people thought that Moi was returning the baton to the Kenyatta family. So when he came in, he contested for presidency under Kanu, and then you had Raila, who was the then Secretary General, defecting from Kanu with a group of people against what he termed as Uhuru Project. He lost his first bid for power, but goes into cabinet and serves as a Minister of Finance, and then grows through the ranks And then after Chivachi's 10 years, he launches a fresh bid at the presidency. And this time he wins, but he comes to power with allegations of violence, with the allegations of ICC, through the 2007 post-election violence that led to Chivachi's second term, where they were members of that coalition. So the second term of Chivachi ends and with the unresolved post-election violence. We saw the eminent team, the eminent members of Africa led by President Mbeki trying to negotiate that violence. Issues remained unresolved and led to The Hague. So you have people contesting. By then, Uhuru and Ruto, their common denominator or common factor then was a threat of ICC charges hanging on their necks. It unites them and they find opportunity in adversity, and they win the presidency on that joint ticket. So the first 2 years were dominated by the trips to ICC by the president and his deputy. But I think they put the act together and were able to run the state in the first term, dominated with the major big corruption scandals here and there in agriculture, in education, and other scandals. But Kenya being a big economy, and it has always had famous for big scandals, the Golden Bag scandal, and Moi, and so many big scandals. So you're talking of big money. It pulls through somehow. But whereas when you talk to ordinary Kenyans, whereas under Chivachi, the ordinary Kenyans would tell you that they are enjoying an economy that works, like Chivachi had pledged, then that gets lost in the first term of Uhuru presidency. But he has done a number of flagship programs, the standard gauge railway, the airport express highway, which has diffused the former Nairobi traffic jam that would take 3 to 4 hours. You now need 30 minutes to get to the airport, regardless of what time you're traveling. He has launched a number of visible economic projects, but also the country is riding with a huge economic debt. But when you go to Nairobi town, you can see visible development of buildings, architectural designs that are meant to save space, protect air pollution, and then be able to advance as a country. But for me, what stands out most of Uhuru's achievements in office, one is his leadership to the East African community. When he assumed the chair of the East African community, the community was falling apart. It had failed to meet for more than 2 years because of the standoff between Uganda and Rwanda. And then so you had the chair moving from Uganda, moving to Rwanda, and then there was no consensus, even on when to hold the summits as a community, until when the chair reversed to Kenya, to Kenyatta. The second achievement that stands out for me, of course, although there are weaknesses on East African community, including trade bickerings, including failure to decisively resolve conflicts and promote democracy, and a rush to incorporate failed states into a community. So maybe we'll have time to have the likes of Professor Mwambustya here, and we are going to debate the progress of East African Federation. But he has been able to revive the structures of the community, including the heads of states, and to have meetings and take decisions. On the democratic space, Uhuru's style of leadership could not hold on to or close civic space in Kenya. I shared with somebody last night, and I said, when you have a person with a happy soul, they don't have time to plan evil. They do not have time for mischief. So when you look at the actions of Uhuru, regardless of the challenges he has faced, both as an individual and as a president, he has not instigated any mischief to endanger the democratic process of Kenya. He has left the space open. Even when his victory was overturned, he had the magnanimity to allow the reforms recommended by Supreme Court to be implemented. He gave Kenya a chance to progress democratically to another level. I could say more and more, but for me, there's a standout. And I think he has left a landmark legacy for his presidency.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor?
Thank you. Commenting on Uhuru and his political style and legacy, I must say that, first of all, let's first understand that we are not saying Kenya has arrived. Kenya still has challenges of developing countries, like we do have here. But we are saying that they are moving a step ahead. And they are moving a step ahead. One is that the political leadership in Kenya has allowed the kind of autonomy and independence of the judiciary to do what it can do in order to exercise some accountability to the executive.
The checks and balances.
And I want to commend Uhuru that, one, he has not done away with certain provisions in the constitution to stand for another term. He has accepted to work for his. He tried to maneuver to come in directly through BBI, but when the court quashed it, he accepted the status quo. So that in itself, I think, is commendable. That because in the whole of Africa today, in this era, contemporary era, the most the politically destabilizing factor is the third term, is asking for more terms by the presidents. It has destabilized very many states in Africa. So that one, he is commendable. Two, he has done something about the security in Kenya. I think Kenya was faced by the security challenge of terrorists. And he handled them. I don't know, with an iron hand or whatever, but he did something, I think, commendable. Some people might say we civilians, if we're in power, cannot handle security things, but I think Kenyatta did something in Kenya because he's bordering Somalia and these other terrorist states. I think he did a commendable job. How he did it, I have no details, but I commend him. And he was challenged. There were bombs in his reign and this and that. Mombasa, wherever, Nairobi, northern Kenya, but he tried his best, I think, in that regard. Concerning East African community, I don't have many kudos for him, and indeed any other of the leaders in East Africa. I am interested in East African community integration. I even lead an organization called Vision East Africa. And we have got one aspect that would contribute to the East African integration, which all the leaders have ignored. Some time back, about 10 years ago or so, the East African Secretariat, Community Secretariat, came up with a draft for good democracy and good governance, which would have created a situation where citizens can hold their people, their leaders, accountable through the East African Court of Justice. Because, so they refused. The summit refused to to do what? To approve that,
ratify
that protocol. That would be the best protocol that would have contributed a lot to East African integration and democracy in East Africa. That you have a protocol and therefore a citizen can go to the East African community to hold their government accountable, you referring to that protocol. They refused it, and even Uhuru Kenyatta has left it. Another challenge that where I don't give him kudos, from my ideological orientation, these people call it disorientation, I look at governance and development also in terms of emancipation and justice, social justice. When you look at the developments that we are crediting Uhuru and the likes in Kenya, it is from Mombasa to Maraba or to Busia along the railway line. Development is taking place along the railway line. If you go to northern Kenya, the far northern Kenya, northeastern Kenya, these fellows are almost like in Karamoja. If we go to the coast, these areas bordering Chirimanjaro, the coastal people, they are more or less left behind. So the development that in Kenya, Kenya needs to come up with a policy that will make sure that they redistribute not necessarily the wealth, but opportunities for the rest. You can see even in appointing these leadership which have taken place. You have Ruto, and his running mate is a Chikuyu along the railway line. You have Odinga along the railway line, and the running mate is Martha Karua along the railway line, a Chikuyu also. What are these? Where are these other people? Are they not Kenyans? When you talk about Kenya and we want to have Kenya move forward, as the president-elect has said, we want to move Kenya to another step. Which step? The step of having developments only taking place along the rail line in central Kenya. What about the peripheral areas? My ideological orientation is that there should be equal opportunities for the whole country, for all society, for all social classes, for all ethnic groups. I think that's where Kenya is getting it wrong, which needs to be reoriented and done better. But finally, I wanted to say something that I wanted to say before, that this petition, the promised petition, he has not petitioned Raila Odinga. I think it was a necessary evil. There is an analysis of post-election election violence. It normally takes place the day or the day after, or within 3 days after results have been announced. After that, there is a tendency not to be post-election election violence. The euphoria, the sentiments, the emotions come down. So indirectly, there is a way in which this promised petition is cooling down the tempers. I am happy that actually the promised petition has been promised, so that you have the cooling period. If that cooling period was not there, you know, they started demonstrating, by the way, and burning tires in Chiberu, in Kisumu, and elsewhere. If there was no that hope that the promised petition was given, I suspect many more people would be dead, like they happened in 2007. But now the country has been put in an atmosphere where everybody expects that maybe when the petition goes through, we might win. And therefore, this has provided a cooling period, which to me is positive. So the petition, and even these commissioners who also disowned their commissioner, the major commissioner, Wafula, I think there is a way in which it is a blessing in disguise. It is a blessing in disguise in the sense that it is allowing Kenyans to cool down. Normally, there is no post-election violence when you allow like a week after the elections and the euphoria and emotions have come down. Even when things go wrong, there is a tendency for the citizens to ignore. So I am saying this was a blessing in disguise. I think we should have hope that there will not be such a big violence in Kenya, maybe sometime or sparked off by something, but once the people are promised a petition. But lastly, even that petition promise carries more weight against the backdrop that in the whole of Africa, I don't know in which other country, the Kenyan courts quashed an election last time around in the Kenya elections. So that set a precedent that the Kenyan court can do something. And I think Kenyan courts, it is how the constitutional design and the legal design of appointment of the judiciary. She is talking about my colleague, Dr. Mtunga. That gentleman is from the academic side, by the way. Was no nonsense. And he has set a system in the judiciary in Kenya that you cannot just have the executive stand over the sit over the judiciary. One time I remember an incident. You were in Kenya to get out of the country. You are required to be cleared, especially when you are a senior officer, to be cleared by State House. And Mutunga went to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and they asked him to provide that certificate to get out of the country. And he told the immigration officers that there is separation of powers. I'm not part of the executive, and therefore I seek no permission from anybody. They insisted that you get the permission. He said, I have gone home. I am going to go home. Give me that in writing that you have refused me to get out without permission. He went home. He missed the flight. I think he was going in some part in South Africa. He reached home and rang the president. He had to be chartered an aeroplane to take him to his destination. So we want such a judiciary. And as Sarah pointed out, the way it is appointed, the way they designed that you are appointed even in the glare of the public, not in our case where you find the Chief Justice. I have no problem with him at a personal level, but this Chief Justice we have in Uganda was a minister in the current government. I think at one time he worked at the NRM Secretariat as one of the cadres, like my friend here. He didn't, but he was a minister in this government.
He was a minister, state minister for Northern
Uganda. For a politician who has served in a certain government, and because to be a minister, you have to demonstrate your cadreship, that you are for that government and you are nurtured under that tradition of collective responsibility. To be appointed a Chief Justice, and you expect to be impartial when it comes to such a political petitions. Civil petitions, you may. Civil whatever cases, but political cases, when you have been a minister in a government and a certain president who has appointed you a Chief Justice, I don't see how you can afford in a petition to quash his election win. It is humanly not possible. Therefore, Kenyans have hope that their judiciary has demonstrated, has had a precedence, and also, finally, I must say, I like this petition. It has allowed the cooling down period. And in most cases, if you analyze post-election violence globally, it normally takes place immediately the results have been announced. Once you have had some time after the announcement of the elections, it is not easy to have mass violence in the country. And I thank whoever sought of the petition, although it might be a blessing in disguise, he may not have intended it, but in my opinion, I want even the petition to go ahead as we have more cooling period and we shall have success in Kenya.
Thank you very much, Professor Afande.
The legacy, first of all, I don't dispute what my other colleagues have said in as far as the legacy is concerned. Legacy, by definition or by inference, is what keeps memory about you. And is always kind of inclined to positivism, that you must have something positive. But nevertheless, people always mention everything, even because you're a public figure. So Uhuru has tried his best, but of course somebody will say, no, he was taking alcohol. That won't go away. And that was his life. I mean, it will be written somewhere. But nevertheless, he did his work.
Is he that a president?
He did his work. Yeah, so that will be part of the legacy that will be mentioned. The other thing, I wanted to judge him vis-a-vis what many take it as undisputed legacy. Nyerere, for example. So I would want that like a juxtaposition. Nyerere left Tanzania to a purely national, in a nationalistic tendency. I was in Geneva one time, and there's a bar in Geneva in Switzerland which is called the East African Bar. It is run by Tanzanians. There are 6 siblings, girls and boys. So one Sunday I passed there because they are my friends. They had closed the door. They are working, cleaning and doing all that. But I could hear over the window speaking Swahili. I knocked and they opened for me because they are friends. I asked them, you people, don't you have your mother language? You are all from the same mother. They said, yeah, we have our mother language. I said, but you are speaking Swahili. Said, for us, Mwalimu left us a national language. Even when
you are siblings.
they are siblings, 2 girls and 4 boys. But you could see they had closed the door, the bar, they were cleaning, but cleaning in Swahili. But I also was in Geneva around the time when Kenya had problems. You could see even the embassy, there were still cliques. So Kenyans ordinarily would easily fall into speaking Luo if they're Luo. The Kikuyu would easily fall into speaking Kikuyu, which you don't see in Tanzania. So that's why I wanted to juxtapose the legacy vis-a-vis Nyerere attempt. So Uhuru has tried, but we have not, it didn't climax to that stage. The national language, Swahili is spoken, but still the national language has not reached. The economy, of course, we measure the strength of the economy vis-a-vis the general. Whether the country is manufacturing only tanks, they calculate the strength of the tank, how much it is sold, and they say the country is rich. But as Professor says, this giant of East African economy, BBC, I said the other day, came up with a report that in the Horn of Africa, did they say every 18 minutes somebody was dying of hunger, and Kenya was listed. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, Uganda was not on that league.
Karamajong have died.
It came much later. But the time BBC report came, it had not.
Now we can no longer reference
what I'm saying,
But Uganda is not in the Horn of Africa.
Yes, I'm not celebrating anything, but I'm saying for a giant economy to still be listed
It's
there,
unfortunate.
it is unfortunate for a giant economy to be listed there at the time of. I'm glad Professor agrees.
No, there we agree.
Yeah. So
Now there is I am ideologically correct now.
so you can still see that still dent the legacy, but by far he has held the country in the one vis-a-vis the past history, which was violent with ICC. The economy really, in figures, has continued, and he has brought brotherhood. I am sure, who cares if you're a Kenyan in Uganda? Or I think even the rivers. You're a Kenyan in a Wanegea or in where you can speak your Swahili. We are one. And I think we should go along that trend. Of course, a lot more need to do in especially institutionalizing. Because so far now, it looks like the East Africans are relating on interpersonal relationship. Since the state have failed to do what they do, the persons have continued to be brothers. Because we all have same history and we are same people. So we have transcended the borders on our own. The institutional framework that is supposed to be done by the states or by the power holders is withheld. The people have jumped over the borders. So, good luck to Uhuru. I hope he enjoys his retirement.
You ask those who jumped the borders in Katuna, they were shot dead in Rwanda.
Yeah, you can see even when persons want to say, hey, state, with your border and your map, for us we are one. Still the state want to disintegrate us. So, if I was to give percent, really, he has done over 90%. The rest you can leave it. And I hope he enjoys his
People
retirement.
dying of hunger in a rich country. By the way, Kenya
That is the
almost
10%.
going to the upper middle income status.
Yes. But that is the other percentage. So I hope the laws are strong enough to protect presidents in retirement, so that it's protected and except for personal liability. But I hope it will endure, especially the protection I'm talking about in terms of having what to eat, how to live, so that it doesn't give other leaders that I must stay, so that when I leave, I will live like this. But of course, other crimes, I think the law is clear about it, that you are not, if it is in Uganda, you are not held in any court of law. I want listeners to know this, that if you're a president in Uganda, you cannot go to any court of law. To the extent that even if a wife of the president wants to divorce in a purely private civil matter, she can't take a president to court. The best you can do is a memorandum of a separation agreement. You sign a separation agreement with your husband, who is a president, but you can't take him to court. But after that, there's another legal regime. But my point here is that they should be guaranteed safety for their welfare, so that when he leaves a happy person and makes
They have a
everybody
president.
happy.
They have maybe
And
to
Kibaki-
note, yes.
Yeah, again, I just should have added that they already have presidents.
And they have a long transition with even timelines like the US. Even now, after announcing Ruto as president-elect, the transition committee was announced. He received
They have already
security.
given statements.
They are doing meetings. The transition committee is meeting even when he's faced with a possible court challenge. So they have clear
So
transition.
even if he has not reached the Makerere step,
we do
but
not
I'm
have,
okay with him.
we do not have here in Uganda.
Interesting. Yeah, finally,
Yeah, you know, a good leader must also, one of the tenets of a good leader is they must be able to communicate and inspire, not undermine and degrade, because a president's word moves people, moves markets, can inspire. And one of the things that Uhuru should be remembered for is that he gave speeches that inspired Kenyans.
Yeah.
And you can see extracts from his speeches, and he's inspiring Kenyans. And so he came out as a modern leader with a new face, of a human face. He came out in reality, not these clubs of my friends here, my colleague here,
I have a club.
Pan-Africanism. He came out as an inspiring Pan-Africanist who put you know, the African, who put face to an African human being, and it felt like we can also make it. We can compare him with his Ghanaian counterpart, where you really feel that even if he stopped here, but at least he's inspiring us.
Yeah.
So he should be remembered. But finally, for me, to really emphasize what I don't, for example, the BBI issue, building bridges initiative issue, many people looked at it from the point of power sharing, some kind of political corruption, or breaking rules, and then finally it collapses as a result of a court ruling. But to me, the initiative and its ingredients softened the ground, the political ground, and especially from the point of view of the traditional existing sentiments between the Odinga group, the Luo, and the Kikuyu, and the Kikuyu. Me, I looked at it from that point of view, that there's a move. At least you want. No one will blame him for failing to, you know, to bring softness to the presidential table with regard to his long-time friend and rival at the same time. Sometimes I imagine when Kenyatta and the father, the senior, and Odinga Senior were in State House, maybe Odinga now today and Uhuru today
They were playing around.
were playing around the compound. So I'm imagining that this BBI was so much of a good thing, even if it didn't succeed, that it softened
Yeah.
Kenya.
Yeah,
And
but there is a way he wanted to come in,
No,
like
yeah.
Putin.
Yeah, of course
yeah,
the
but at
courts.
least, the courts helped. The courts helped, but
Maybe if I may contribute
but
a bit to your point.
yeah.
I think it's important to note that in these elections, tribal ethnic politics were diffused. In this campaign, at least there was space for issues and there was no ethnic toxic communications or hate speeches and the rest. And the alliances were cutting across the formerly drawn tribal lines. So that is the part of the outcomes of
even if it didn't
BBI.
come to legal reality, but it softened the ground. It diffused traditional tensions. Tribal talks were undermined in a way. And to me, that's a great achievement for Uhuru. An inspirer and a man who demonstrated that he actually loves the unity of his country. And he came out as a modern leader, appealing to young people and put a face to the Africanness and made us look a bit swaggerific, as opposed to these people who leave us to die and even shoot us once in a while. At least for him, he didn't. And then again, talk of Pan-Africanism. I dream of a day before I die, and that's my conclusion. Before I die, when the price of an African black body will be so high that no fellow black African, in the spirit of Pan-Africanism. I don't know where it is located. I don't know whether it's in South Sababa. I don't know whether it's in around Lake Tanganyika. Will consume us and begin to value each body. And that now, for example, when our fellow citizens in Karamoja hungry, that the nation would move, that no one would sleep, that the religious leaders would be working day and night to make sure that the political leaders respond. But as I talk, I see them fighting over sizes of the cars. What when the children of God are dying.
We have had 3 presidential addresses with no mention of Karamoja.
I hurt for that matter. And I don't like this level of dishonesty and this too much elitism that has no heart of people. You know. When I studied in the developed world at some point, if you go to city council, even when you're town council, let's say Ireland, you move just in the morning, you move town council and you tell someone, I have nothing to eat. They can give you money. Even when you're an immigrant, say, I have nothing to eat tonight. I have food. They would give you. The council can say, look for a way of helping you to at least to be dignified, to have a meal. And so to have Pan-African talk without these very serious components at the back of the mind is total emptiness. It's like people are looking for degrees in Pan-Africanism. It's a reality that we must protect each other and live this one single life. And that you cannot be a leader with a religious or what, and you ignore this. And so we must be cautious on a daily basis when performing our duties to make sure that the Africanness, our Africanness is critical in him. And Uhuru brought it out, and I feel good about Kenya in many ways.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Mr. Moderator, I wanted to make something to conclude on if you are concluding.
We are concluding.
In Africa now, there is a certain tycoon, Ibrahim. He put up a governance prize for Africa. It is called the Ibrahim, I think, governance prize or something like that. And it is normally given to presidents in Africa who leave office without seeking for another term and who live peacefully and they have left some legacy. Now, from the consensus here,
Yeah.
can we,
Yes.
can this panel recommend
Yes.
that Uhuru Kenyatta be given
Yes.
a more Ibrahim governance prize?
He qualifies.
We agree.
We agree.
We agree.
Thank you very much, our dear viewers. And on that note is where we have to end today. Thank you very much, Dr. Deus. Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, Professor Ndebesa, and Council and the retired Major Awich Pollar. And thank you very much, our viewers out there, for being part of this conversation. And I don't know which criteria they use. Maybe probably is it a vote that you write and for that award, or
I
is it
don't know how it is done,
We
but I
will
would
check
recommend
It's
it.
clear.
But
You can, who knows? You can fret the person.
But
and let
you
me
write
read.
as moderator and convey our message.
And make sure that it is in our, what it is emphasized on our, you call it a what, byline? Or byline that we recommend this committee, this panel here
Yes.
recommends that Uhuru Kenyatta gets a more Ibrahim governance prize.
Thank you very much. I think we will have to work on that. And of course, our viewers out there, this is something that we'll need to do. And we shall write and ensure that at least that price, and that's, of course, the letter will go, but the price should be delivered. I think, and I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation today, and you've been part of course, our usual audience. We love the comments and the responses that you give us. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, our crew out there, the TV crew that is always behind the cameras delivering all this to us. And of course, to everyone who loves Uganda, there's many lessons that we can pick from Kenya. And of course, as usual, we need to pray for our country. May God bless Uganda.